Before social media, before viral headlines, before every case became a TikTok theory or a Facebook debate, there was Jackson County, Kentucky. A quiet Appalachian community where everybody knows your business and everybody's related to someone in power. In 2001, this tight-knit place was shaken by a story that had everything: murder, politics, corruption, and betrayal. It would divide families, destroy careers, and become one of the most shocking trials in Eastern Kentucky history. This is the story of Audrey Markham, a young woman caught between love, politics, and danger, and the powerful man accused of taking her life. Jackson County, Kentucky, population just over 10,000 at the time, sits deep in the Appalachian foothills of eastern Kentucky. The county seat, Micky, isn't much more than a stoplight, a courthouse, a Dollar General, and back then, the only chain restaurant in the county, the Dairy Queen. It is the kind of town where news spreads faster than the sheriff can hear about it. And in the fall of 2001, whispers began about a woman named Audrey Markham. 31 years old, beautiful, smart, outgoing, and funny. Audrey spent Saturday, November the 17th, 2001 in Richmond, about an hour away, shopping for her little Pomeranian Cheyenne, watching a movie, and running some errands. On her way home, she pulled through the Dairy Queen drive-thru, bought banana splits for her husband Doug Markham to share at home. They had been married and divorced twice and somehow always found themselves working their way back to each other. But a little while earlier, Audrey had ended another relationship, one that had lasted 8 years, with her on-again, off-again girlfriend, Randy Markham. They were no relation. Now, Randy did not take it well. About a year prior, Audrey had ended another relationship, one that had lasted 8 years, with her on-again, off-again girlfriend, Randy Markham. Randy was no relation to Doug, but Randy did not take it well. When Audrey asked her to move out of her house, Randy exploded. She slashed Audrey's tires, left angry, threatening messages on her machine, and a few days before this, Audrey's car had had a message scrawled in the dust on the trunk. Something vulgar, signed with the initials RM. Audrey told her friends she was scared. She had even warned her sister that if anything happened to her, she wanted her to take care of her little dog, Cheyenne. That Saturday evening, Doug Markham pulled into the driveway of the small brick home they shared 3 miles south of Micky. Audrey's car was parked inside the garage. The door was open, and her purse was sitting right there on the trunk. And Doug found Audrey lying on the cold concrete floor, surrounded by blood and still melting ice cream, with a hole inside her chest. The sheriff's office arrived, the Kentucky State Police followed, and almost immediately small-town rumors began to swirl. And who might have wanted Audrey dead? And within 24 hours, police got a tip that changed everything. Audrey's car was parked inside the garage, the door was open, and her purse was sitting on the trunk. Doug stepped inside the garage and he saw her. He saw Audrey lying on the concrete floor, surrounded by blood and still melting ice cream. She had been shot once in the chest. The sheriff's office arrived, the Kentucky State Police followed, and almost immediately, small-town rumors began to swirl about who might have wanted Audrey dead. And within 24 hours, police got a tip that changed everything. This tip came from David Dean, the son of 58-year-old Jerry Dean, Jackson County's own elected court clerk. David told investigators he believed his father had been the one who had killed Audrey. He said that on the night in question, Jerry had walked away from his house carrying a rifle, and he returned about an hour later, hot and sweaty, and told his son that he had taken care of a job. Police moved fast. The next day, Jerry Dean was arrested for the murder of Audrey Markham. But less than 3 hours later, he was released on a $100,000 signature bond, meaning he didn't have to pay a dime to get out. That decision split the community right down the middle. Half of Jackson County believed Dean was guilty and getting special treatment because of who he was, and the other half believed he was being framed. Half of Jackson County believed Dean was guilty and getting special treatment because of who he was, and the other half believed he was being framed, that local politics and a personal grudge were behind it. Now, Jerry Dean just wasn't any man in Jackson County. He had been the elected court clerk for many years. Respected, church-going, always well-dressed, polite, and friendly. Now, but behind that image was a darker reputation, one that Audrey had become to know all too well. Back in 1995, Audrey had taken a job as a bookkeeper in the clerk's office. She was young, bright, and eager to work. Jerry Dean, her boss, quickly became infatuated with her radiant beauty. He started leaving flirtatious notes on her desk, made suggestive comments, touched her shoulders, and brushed against her in the hallway. Co-workers later said that he would stare at her constantly, following her every move. On one day, he cornered her in the deed room, started pleasuring himself, and told her to help him. This terrified Audrey. When she told co-workers what had happened, co-workers later said that he would stare at her constantly, following her every move. One day, he cornered her in the deed room, started pleasuring himself, and told her to help him. Audrey was terrified. She told co-workers what had happened, and soon after, she quit. But that wasn't the end of it. In August of 1999, Audrey and two other women were interviewed by investigators from Kentucky Attorney General Ben Chandler's office. The investigators were looking into election fraud and corruption in the courthouse. The women told them about Jerry Dean's behavior, his harassment, and his comments about women. The investigators referred them to a civil rights attorney who filed a $30 million lawsuit against Dean in October of 1999 on Audrey's behalf. A deposition was scheduled for 2 days after her death. Now, 3 days after Dean's release, a special grand jury indicted him for first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and intimidating a witness. When officers went to arrest him at his home in Tyner, he was gone. They searched the property. Inside the house, they found 2 letters. One was to his wife, saying he loved her and he planned to go on going to heaven. The other was to his son Doug, saying he didn't kill Audrey, but he had given a gun to Randy Markham to do it. Hours later, at sunrise, Jerry Dean walked into the Kentucky State Police Post in London, Kentucky, freshly shaven with a new haircut, looking like a different man. At his arraignment, David Dean took the stand. He told the judge his father had gone for a walk that night with a rifle and came back saying he had taken care of business. He said his father threw boots and gloves away on the way to a fishing trip. Then he disassembled a rifle and tossed it into the lake, or tossed parts of it into the lake. The state wanted him held without bond, but the judge ruled the case didn't qualify for the death penalty, and he set bail at $1.5 million cash or $3 million property. Dean remained lodged in the Jackson County Jail, and in February 2002, Dean's attorney, Douglas Reese, asked the judge to reduce his bond. And unbelievably, the judge lowered it to $750,000 cash or $1.5 million property. Dean remained lodged in the Jackson County Detention Center from November 2001 up to February of 2002. Dean's attorney, Douglas Reese, petitioned the court to have his bond lowered, telling the judge that he would be prepared to go to a local bank and obtain a $500,000 letter of credit to stand for the amount of Dean's bond if the judge would lower it to the amount. The judge did lower it, but not to the $500,000 that Douglas Reese requested. He lowered it to $750,000 cash or $1.5 million property. 27 family members and friends, along with one group of land heirs, came together, put up their property and homes to secure Jerry Dean's bond. Jerry walked free on home incarceration wearing an ankle monitor. The judge even allowed him to go to work and attend church. And since Dean was running for re-election in 2002, he was granted extended hours to campaign. But Dean faced another hurdle. Every elected official in Kentucky must be bonded and insured before they can serve. The company that issued Jackson County's official bonds refused to cover Dean after his arrest. So he went to the Jackson County Bank and secured a letter of credit for $75,000, just enough to stay in office and secure his spot. He was quite literally a clerk without a bond. Now, prosecutors begged for a change of venue. They said it was impossible to find an unbiased jury in Jackson County. The man was too well known and too connected. The judge denied it at first, saying he could find fair jurors even if he had to bring them in from another county. But when jury selection began, nearly everyone questioned said the same thing. They knew Jerry Dean, they had already formed an opinion, or they had discussed the case with someone else. The trial was moved to neighboring Madison County and scheduled for February 2004, more than 2 years after Audrey's death. By then, Court TV had picked up the case, and the whole country was watching. Trial began, and the prosecution argued that Jerry Dean killed Audrey to silence her lawsuit. To protect his public image, they said that he had walked 3 miles from his son's home to hers, waited in the woods, and shot her with a .30 caliber Winchester rifle. Their star witness being his son David. David told the jurors that his father had been talking about wanting Audrey gone for months, that he'd even offered to buy him a new truck if he would take care of the job. Then came Randy Markham's turn to testify, but she did not show up in court that day. Instead, her father, Charles Poodle Markham, who had ran against Jerry Dean for clerk in 2002, came to the judge with the doctor's note. And this note said that Randy was severely depressed and suicidal and asked the judge to delay her testimony. This infuriated the judge, and he refused. He ordered her to take the stand the next morning or face the consequences. She was the first witness the next day. Randy admitted that she had slashed Audrey's tires, left angry messages, and had threatened her, but insisted she had never met Jerry Dean, had never spoke to him, and that he had never gave her a gun, and that she most certainly was not responsible for killing Audrey Markham. Then came a pivotal moment in the trial. Defense attorney Douglas Reese brought in Arthur Alphen, a renowned ballistics expert known for his work on major Kentucky cases. Now, Reese initially believed that the murder weapon was a pistol, but Alphen disagreed. After examining autopsy photos, he told Reese that the wound was too large, too irregular, and that only a high-powered Soviet-made rifle could produce the type of trauma, he said. When he took the stand, Alphen explained how the bullet entered Audrey's body, tumbled end over end, and exited with tremendous force. He told jurors that there was no way the shot came from outside the garage, as the state claimed. He believed the killer was inside. To demonstrate his theory, Alphen brought in a rifle, a toolkit, and he showed the jury how the stock of the rifles could be interchanged to disguise the weapon's true identity. The prosecution went ballistic, no pun intended. They objected repeatedly, forcing the judge to remove the jury to hold a voir dire hearing to see what Alphen could actually testify to. When the court resumed, the prosecutor started flashing photos of the crime scene, trying to discredit Alphen's theory. And then, in one of those moments that could only happen in real life, the prosecution displayed a photo they hadn't fully examined. This photo showed the inside of Audrey's garage, and on the wall, a gun rack. And hanging on that gun rack, a Russian-made rifle exactly like the one Alphen described and believed to be the murder weapon. The courtroom fell silent. Finally, Jerry Dean took the stand. He denied killing Audrey, denied giving Randy a gun, and he said that he loved his son David, but he had disinherited him because of his drug addiction. And after 2 weeks of testimony, the jury went to deliberate. They returned less than 4 hours later with a not guilty verdict. Jerry Dean walked out of that courtroom a free man. And to this day, the murder of Audrey Markham divides Jackson County. Some say Dean was innocent, framed by political enemies and courthouse corruption, and others believe he got away with murder, protected by influence, money, and a broken system. And in the end, like so many small-town tragedies, the truth lies somewhere between loyalty and lies.